The storm had been growing teeth all morning, long white fangs of frost that bit through coat and bone. By noon, the Elktooth Range was nothing but a blur of white rage and broken timber. I kept my rifle slung across my shoulder and my eyes narrowed against the wind. Up here, winter didn't ask permission. It took what it wanted. I was 3 days into hunting sign of a lost mule when I saw her. At first, I thought the wind was playing tricks on me, shaping shadows in the drifts. But then a scrap of movement, small, weak, caught the corner of my eye. Near an abandoned trapper's shack, half buried under a snowbank, a shape twitched. A person. I trudged closer, boots breaking crusted ice, breath steaming like smoke from a dying chimney. And then I saw her clearly. A woman, wrapped in torn rags, skin blue from cold, fingers stiff around her chest like she was holding her own ribs together. Her hair was soaked and frozen to her cheeks. Snow clung to her lashes like crystals on glass. She wasn't dead, but she was walking the knife's edge. I knelt and slid my arms beneath her shoulders. She startled, eyes flickering open like someone waking from a nightmare that never ended. Her voice scraped out of her throat, barely more than a broken whisper. "I ain't worth much, sir." A shallow breath. But I can cook." Her words made no sense. None at all. Not in that moment. Not in that cold. But they were the words of a dying woman trying to bargain with fate. "Easy," I muttered, lifting her. "You're freezing to death. Save your strength." But before I could carry her off the snow, the forest snapped awake behind me. A gunshot cracked through the trees, close, too close, splintering bark over my head. The woman in my arms flinched violently, and I realized something that chilled me far worse than the storm ever could. Someone wasn't just hunting in these woods. Someone was hunting her. The echo of that gunshot rolled through the timber like thunder trapped in a bottle. I didn't wait for a second one. I hefted the woman, Mae, though I didn't know her name yet, into my arms and pushed into the wind, heading toward the one place nearby that had 4 walls and a roof still standing. The abandoned trapper's shack. The door groaned when I shoved it open with my shoulder. Dust and cold air spilled out, along with the faint smell of old pelts and mold. Not much protection, but enough. I kicked the door shut behind us. "Stay awake," I told her as I lowered her near the hearth. "You freeze now, you won't wake again." Her lips trembled as she tried to answer, but her jaw wouldn't stop shaking. I grabbed the pile of old firewood from the corner, snapped the driest pieces, and struck a match. Soon, flames licked up the stone, sending a thin warmth across the room. She curled toward it like a wilted flower, finding sunlight. Only then did I get a proper look at her. Round face, cheeks red from the cold, maybe late 20s, clothes torn, shoes worn thin. She looked like someone who'd been surviving one day at a time for far too long. When she finally spoke, her voice was thready but clearer. "You didn't have to stop for me." "I did," I replied. "Storm like this eats people." She swallowed hard. "Most men would have walked right past." "I'm not most men." Her eyes softened, but fear flickered beneath. Something deeper than the cold. I crouched beside her. "You said someone's hunting you." She hesitated, looked at the fire, looked at the door, then back at me. "I ain't worth much, sir, but folks don't like when someone like me says no." "Someone like you?" I asked quietly. "A woman with no family, no home, no money. Easy to push, easy to claim." Her throat tightened as she forced the next words out. "He said I owed him labor. Cooking, cleaning, whatever he wanted. And when I ran, he said he'd bring me back." Before I could ask who, a soft crunching sound came from outside. Snow. Bootsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Mae's eyes widened. She clutched my sleeve with trembling fingers. "He found me," she whispered. I stood, hand on my rifle, as shadows moved across the icy window. Whoever hunted her wasn't finished. And he wasn't alone. The shadows outside drifted past the frosted window, slow and searching. Whoever they were, they moved like men who knew the land, and knew exactly what they were hunting. Mae pressed herself closer to the hearth, hands trembling so violently the flames threw shaking shapes across the walls. I stepped between her and the door. "Don't speak," I whispered. The bootsteps paused. Snow crunched softly, someone turning. And then silence. Minutes stretched thin. After what felt like an hour, the presence outside faded into the storm. The wind filled the void they left behind, howling like a warning. When I finally lowered my rifle, Mae let out a breath that broke into a sob. I didn't touch her, didn't move toward her, didn't try to hush the sound. I just let her cry. Sometimes a human being needs that more than promises. When she quieted, she wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand, ashamed. "Sorry, I ain't usually like this." "You almost died out there," I said. "You're allowed a moment." She managed a small laugh, thin but real. "It's been a long time since someone allowed me anything." Silence settled again, but this time it was gentler. I slid my pack off and set a tin cup in her hands. She stared at it like she'd forgotten how to hold kindness. "It's just warm broth," I said. "Sip slow." Her lips parted. "You carry broth in your pack." "Storm season," I answered. "Never know what you'll need." She drank slow, careful, and I watched her shoulders ease. Not comforted, but breathing again. After a while, she murmured, "You don't even know my name." "I reckon you'll tell me when you're ready." A faint smile tugged at her mouth. "It's Mae. Mae Carter." I nodded. "Elias Crowe." She blinked. "Crowe, the man who lives up on Black Elk Ridge." "That'd be me." "Folks say you don't talk much." "Folks say plenty." She stared into the fire, voice dropping. "They said a lot about me, too, things that weren't true." The flames cracked softly. Outside, Snow whispered against the door. "Tell me what happened," I said. She hesitated, but something in her broke open, like a dam holding back too much truth. "I worked at the Granger Hotel. I was their cook. Good one, too. Folks came from 3 towns for my meals." Her chin trembled. Then Silas Granger, owner of the place, started coming into the kitchen. Stayed too long. Stood too close. Told me a woman like me ought to be grateful a man like him showed interest. I felt heat rise in my chest. "Did he touch you?" "No," she looked down. I said no first. "And he didn't like that." Her silence was answer enough. "He set a fire," she whispered. "A small one. Just enough damage to blame me. Sheriff Boyd arrested me without a trial. Said I'd pay my debt working for Silas directly." Her breath hitched again. I ran. Been running for 2 days. The last words came out hoarse, but steady. He said he'd hunt me till he got what he wanted. I let the truth settle between us, heavy as a snow-covered roof. "You should have found help sooner," I said. She shook her head slowly. "Help ain't something that comes easy for women like me, Mr. Crowe." "That's so. Big. Poor. Alone." A sad smile ghosted across her lips. "People see all that before they see me." I stared at her a long moment. "I see you just fine." Her breath caught. Her eyes watered again, but this time with something warmer than fear. The firelight flickered across her face, softening the sharp edges the world had carved into her. For the first time since I found her in the snow, she didn't look like she was waiting to be hurt. She looked like someone remembering what it felt like to be human. And that's when I knew. Silas Granger wasn't done. He'd come back for her, and I'd be damned if I let him take her. Morning came slow and gray, the kind of light that didn't warm anything, just revealed how cold the world truly was. I had dozed sitting upright against the wall, rifle across my lap. Mae slept curled near the hearth, breath shallow but steady. She looked younger like that, softer, almost peaceful. But peace wasn't built to last in these woods. The crunch of hooves on frozen ground snapped me awake. Not the uncertain wander of a lost traveler. Purposeful. Heavy. Men who rode with authority they didn't earn. Mae sat up instantly, fear blooming in her eyes. She didn't need to look outside to know. "He found us," she whispered. I held a finger to my lips and moved to the door. Through a slit in the boards, I saw 3 riders in deputy coats. Sheriff Boyd led them, lean man, gray beard, hollow cheeks, and a face carved by years of serving the wrong master. He dismounted slow, boots sinking into the snow. "Crowe," he shouted. "Step on out. Need a word." His voice carried the arrogance of a man who didn't fear consequences. I cracked the door open just enough to step outside and shut it behind me. The cold bit into my face. "Morning, Sheriff." He eyed me with feigned politeness. "Got word you're harboring a fugitive." "Just me here," I said. "And the snow." He chuckled like a man who didn't find anything funny. "See, that don't line up with what we were told." Behind him, one of his riders scanned the tree line, hand resting on his holster. The other sniffed like he could smell fear through the wood. Boyd took a step closer, lowering his voice. "Silas Granger says Mae Carter stole from him and ran. Says she's dangerous. Says she owes him labor for damages." I didn't blink. "Silas lies." "Maybe." Boyd shrugged. "But the law's the law, and you know what it is for harboring a runaway." He let the sentence hang. Hanging. The punishment wasn't subtle. I stared him down. "She ain't here." Boyd's gaze hardened. "If she is, Crowe, you best hand her over. Granger's men ain't gentle when they come back for what's theirs." His implication was clear as the frost between us. This wasn't a warning. It was a threat. He swung into his saddle, looked down at me, and tipped his hat with a mockery of respect. "You're a smart man, Elias. Don't go doing something foolish." The riders turned and disappeared into the pines. The moment they were gone, Mae cracked the door open, shivering. "What did he say?" I shut my rifle jaw tight. "He said they'll be back." The sheriff's warning didn't linger long in the air. It sank into the snow like blood, heavy and certain. Mae stood in the doorway, her hands wringing the fabric of her sleeves, breath fogging in the cold. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shaking. She was just defeated. The kind of defeated that comes from a lifetime of being prey. I stepped past her into the cabin. "We have hours, maybe less. We use them." She swallowed hard. "Use them for what?" "To make this place a fight, not a capture." Her eyes widened. "But they're armed. There's a whole group of them." "So are we," I said, checking the rifle chamber. She stared at the weapon like it was a snake. Then she took a shaky breath and nodded. "Good. Fear wasn't the enemy. Surrender was." I moved through the cabin fast. Years alone in the mountains had taught me how to make four walls into a fortress. I pushed the old oak table against the front window. Mae, still in shock, started gathering pans, blankets, anything she thought might matter. "Not that," I said, pointing at the flimsy stool she held. "Get the big pot. Iron one." "For what?" "You'll see." She hustled to the little stove, grabbed the heavy cast-iron pot with both hands, nearly stumbling under its weight. The determination on her face wasn't something I'd seen before. She wanted to help. Needed to help. "Good," I murmured. "Now fill it." She pumped water into the pot, then lit the stove with hands that trembled more from purpose than fear. I saw something in her then, a spark, and it wasn't weakness. While she boiled water, I hammered boards across the back window, reinforced the broken lock with spare trap springs, and stacked firewood into a barricade along the eastern wall. Mae moved beside me. "What else can I do?" "Food," I said. "Enough to last the night." She blinked. "Food now. You said you could cook." "That wasn't a joke. A fed fighter thinks better." She paused, then nodded, rolling up her sleeves. Soon, the cabin filled with the quiet, rhythmic sounds of chopping, stirring, simmering. For a moment, the place no longer felt abandoned. It felt alive. I watched her out of the corner of my eye. Focused. Swift. Sure-handed. This wasn't the broken girl I carried from the snow. This was someone remembering who she used to be. We worked in silence until the cabin felt less like a trap and more like a stand. Mae wiped sweat from her brow. "Elias, why are you doing all this?" I slid a final board into place and looked at her. "Because you deserve a chance to fight for your life, not just run from it." The words hit her harder than any bullet. Outside, the sky dimmed. The wind stilled. The mountain got quiet. Too quiet. Mae's voice trembled. "They're coming, aren't they?" I checked the rifle one last time. "Yes," I said, "but we'll be ready." Night came early. Too early. The storm clouds rolled over the ridge like a black tide, swallowing the last scraps of daylight. Mae stood near the hearth, hands gripping the iron pot she'd used for cooking earlier, now filled with boiling water, steam curling up like ghostly fingers. Her breath shook, but her stance that was firm. She was scared, but she was ready. I checked the rifle again, then the knife on my belt, then the backup pistol hidden under the floorboard. I wasn't expecting to survive this, because I was smarter. I was expecting to survive because I was stubborn, and because those men didn't know how dangerous a cornered soul can be. The air shifted. Snow pattered against the windows. Wind died to a whisper. Only one thing makes the mountain that quiet. Men approaching. I moved to the sliver of open window. Mae hovered behind me, clutching the pot. I saw lantern light bobbing through the trees. Shadows. Horses snorting steam into the frozen dark. 6 riders. Silas Granger among them, unmistakable even in a blizzard. Tall, broad, wrapped in a wolf fur coat, and arrogance thicker than the storm. His voice slashed through the cold like a whip. "Crowe, you got what belongs to me." Behind me, Mae let out a tiny sound, not a cry, not a sob. Something deeper, a sound a hunted deer might make when the dogs get too close. I steadied my voice. "She ain't yours." Silas laughed, a low, oily rumble. "Everything on my land's mine, and she was on my land. This ain't your land." He smirked. "Mountains don't protect thieves." "Funny," I said. "Thought the same thing about liars." The men behind him shifted in their saddles. Tension. Uncertainty. Even wolves hesitate if another wolf bares teeth. Silas didn't hesitate. "Last chance, Crowe. Hand her over, or we burn that shack to the earth." Mae's breath stuttered. "Elias, he means it." "I know," I said softly. Then I raised my rifle and fired. The first shot split the air, cracking through the storm. One of Silas's men fell backward off his horse with a cry, snow exploding around him. The other riders jerked in shock. The siege began instantly. Gunfire shattered the cabin's front boards, bullets punching splinters into the air. Mae yelped and ducked, covering her head. I grabbed her by the arm and dragged her behind the heavy table. "Stay low," I shouted. The walls shook from impact after impact. Silas shouted orders. Horses snorted in panic. Snow whipped in sideways as bullets tore gaps through the wood. I leaned out and fired twice more. One bullet hit a lantern. Flames burst and sputtered in the snow. The other grazed a rider's arm, sending him spinning. "Push forward." Silas roared. "Get the girl." Mae whimpered, hands trembling around the boiling pot. "What do I do? What do I do?" "If anyone breaks that door," I said, "you hit him with that." She stared at the steaming pot, like it weighed her whole soul, then nodded. The front latch rattled violently. Someone was trying to break it. Then, crack, the door flew inward, slamming against the wall. A man burst through, face wild, gun raised. Mae screamed and swung. The boiling water cascaded over the attacker's arm, steam hissing as he shrieked and dropped his gun. Before he could recover, I barreled into him, tackling him to the ground. The two of us thrashed across the dirt floor, fists, elbows, knees, boots. He grabbed my throat. I slammed his head against the floorboard. He clawed for my eyes. I drove my knife into his shoulder. He howled and collapsed. I rolled off him, chest heaving. Mae crouched beside me, hands shaking violently. I hurt him. I really. "You saved us," I said, pushing to my feet. "Now keep at it." Gunfire peppered the walls again, making the entire shack vibrate. Snow blew through every new hole, cold and sharp as glass. Silas shouted from somewhere outside. "Crowe, you think she'll follow a mountain rat like you? Mae belongs with me." "Over my dead body," I muttered. "Fine." His voice twisted into something feral. "That can be arranged." Another crash. 2 men burst through the side window at once. I spun, firing point blank. One fell instantly. The other lunged for Mae. I saw it in slow motion. Her scream. His hand reaching. Her stumbling backward. Her grip tightening on the iron pot. She swung with every ounce of fear and fury inside her. The skillet smashed into his jaw with a sickening thud. He toppled. Did not get up. Mae stood frozen for a beat, then gasped. I didn't mean. You meant to live, I said. That's enough. Then a shadow filled the doorway, larger, darker, unmistakable. Silas Granger stepped inside. Wolf fur coat draped around him, snow in his beard, hat low over eyes burning with triumph. He looked at Mae. There you are. She backed away until she hit the far wall. Silas grinned. You gave me a chase, darling. I like that. Shows spirit. I raised my rifle. Silas didn't even glance at me. Drop it. I didn't. He moved faster than I expected. His fist slammed into the rifle barrel, knocking it aside. I tried to counter, but he hit me again, hard enough to knock the breath from my lungs. I staggered back. He towered over me. You should have stayed out of this, Crowe. Mae screamed. Leave him alone. Silas laughed, low and cruel. He can't protect you. He grabbed my coat, jerked me upright, and tossed me across the cabin like a sack of grain. My shoulder hit the wall, with a crack that blazed through my nerves. I collapsed, vision swimming. Silas turned toward Mae. There's my cook, he growled. Mae's tears fell hot and fast, but she didn't drop the skillet. Didn't kneel. Didn't surrender. She stood shaking, but standing all the same. Silas reached for her. I surged forward, roaring, and tackled him a second time. The two of us crashing through the broken door into the snow outside. The cold bit instantly, but adrenaline kept my limbs burning hot. We rolled, punched, clawed at each other. Silas slammed a knee into my ribs. I rammed my elbow into his throat. He grabbed a fistful of snow and shoved it into my face, trying to suffocate me. I headbutted him, stars bursting behind my eyes. We wrestled in the snow like two beasts, breath steaming into the night, storm swirling around us. But Silas was big, brutal, a man used to taking. He pinned me. You're done, Crowe. I strained beneath him, lungs failing, vision dimming. And then, a scream. Mae's scream. Silas turned his head, just in time to see her swinging. The iron skillet hit him, full across the temple. A dull, sickening crack echoed across the ridge. Silas slumped sideways into the snow. Motionless, Mae dropped the skillet, falling to her knees beside me. Elias, say something. I exhaled a shuddering breath. Next time, I rasped. Aim lower. She let out a choked, hysterical laugh, half relief, half terror. The siege was over, at least the part with bullets. But dawn had yet to come, and dawn always brings the truth. The storm eased with the kind of gentleness that felt like apology. Snow slowed from furious spirals to soft drifting flakes, settling over the dead and broken like a white shroud. Dawn crept over the ridge in thin gold ribbons, stretching across the battered cabin, across the fallen men, across the woman kneeling beside me with tears freezing on her cheeks. Mae's hands shook as they hovered over my chest. Elias, please. I'm all right, I rasped, sitting up with a wince. My ribs burned, my shoulder screamed, and my head rang like a church bell. But I was breathing. He didn't finish the job. Her relief hit so fast it broke her. She covered her mouth, sobbing into her palms, not loud, not dramatic, just the small, cracked sobs of a woman who'd been fighting too long with no one to stand beside her. I reached out and touched her wrist. She lifted her eyes to me, red, raw, terrified, hopeful. You saved my life, I said. You saved mine, she whispered. We sat there a while, just breathing, just living. When I finally stood, the cold knifed through the adrenaline that had kept me warm. The cabin door hung crooked. The walls were peppered with bullet holes. The floor was stained with blood and melted snow. Smoke from the hearth drifted through a split board in the roof. Mae hugged herself, teeth chattering. It's ruined. No, I said. It's standing. She looked at me like she didn't understand. I gestured around us. Cabins can be rebuilt. Doors can be fixed. Windows can be patched. What matters is who's still inside the walls. Her breath caught. Not from cold. From meaning. We dragged the bodies out and stacked them far from the cabin. The storm had softened their features, turning rage to stillness, violence to silence. Silas Granger lay separate, not by choice, but by truth. Mae stood over him for a long moment. I was afraid of him for so long, she murmured. And now, she exhaled slowly. Now, I'm done being afraid. I nodded. Good. Fear loses power when you look it in the eye. We returned to the cabin. I propped the front door back onto its hinges. Mae swept the broken glass into a corner. She moved slowly, uncertainly, as if unsure whether she was allowed to touch anything in a place that wasn't hers. But then she gathered the half-burned firewood, set fresh tinder, and lit a flame with practiced ease. Orange light poured across the room, warming more than the air. I watched her for a long moment, then stepped toward her. Mae. She turned. This place could use a cook, I said quietly. Her eyes widened. You're asking me to stay? I'm asking you to choose it, I corrected. You've had too many choices made for you. She swallowed, hands tightening on her apron. I've never had a place that felt like mine. You do now. Her breath hitched again, softer this time, trembling with something that wasn't fear. Hope. She stepped closer, voice barely a whisper. If I stay, it wouldn't just be to cook. I know, I said. And you're all right with that? I finally smiled, a slow, tired, honest smile I hadn't felt in years. More than all right. The dawn pushed fully over the ridge then, washing the mountains in gold. Snow sparkled. Smoke curled from the chimney in a straight, gentle line. The storm was gone. The world looked clean again. Mae opened the pot she'd saved from the night before, the stew she'd refused to let burn even in the siege, and ladled 2 bowls. She handed me one with hands that no longer shook. We ate on the porch, wrapped in blankets, watching the sunrise melt the frost from the pines. For the first time in a long, empty stretch of years, I wasn't alone, and neither was she. The ridge had room for both of us. There's a saying the old trappers used to whisper around their dying fires. The mountain takes what's weak, and returns what's strong. I used to think it meant survival of the fittest. But now, I know better. Sometimes strength ain't about how hard you fight. Sometimes it's about how long you keep walking when the world's turned its back on you. Mae Carter walked through 2 days of snow, starvation, and fear, but she never quit. She never bowed. She never let the darkness claim her. And when the worst kind of man came to break her spirit, she did the bravest thing a soul can do. She chose to live. And in doing so, she gave me a reason to live too. These mountains have seen enough death, enough cruelty, enough men like Silas Granger carving their names into the land. Maybe it's time they saw something else, a woman finding her worth, and a man finding his purpose beside her. Now, friends, if this story reached you, if it stirred something in you, tell me what you would have done. Leave your words down below the firelight of the comment box. And if you want more tales from these wild, lonely ridges, ride with me again. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll keep the stories burning.